Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for joining Pérez Art Museum Miami virtually tonight. My name is René Muralist. I am the Chief Curator here at PAMM. And tonight we're very pleased to be presenting the latest installment of PAMM's live studio visits with Miami-based artists, made possible by the generous support of the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation. At the end of tonight's program, I'll show a slide with the full schedule of upcoming presentations. So be ready to mark those down in your calendars. For now, I'll just mention that next month, coming up soon on December 10th, we have artist Carlos Estevez in conversation with curatorial assistant and publications coordinator Maritza Lacayo. I want to take this moment, just a brief moment, to thank the incredible team at PAMM that makes these programs come alive. With special thanks to Jennifer Ignacio, Anita Bram, Denise Faxas, and Andrew Bird. Tonight, I am super excited to be speaking with Reginald O'Neal. Reggie was born right here in Miami in 1992. He has participated in numerous mural programs throughout the world, from Italy, Spain, and Norway to Indonesia, Havana, and Dominican Republic. His gallery work has been exhibited at the Museum of Contemporary Art, Laundromat 2.0, Collabo 6, and Spinello projects here in Miami, among many other venues. His films have been featured at the Sharjah Film Festival in Dubai, the Ann Arbor Film Festival, and the Smithsonian African American Film Festival in Washington, D.C. He is a recipient of the 2020 South Florida Consortium Prize and has been awarded residencies in Catalonia and Brooklyn. Reggie's first solo gallery exhibition will open on November 20th at Spinello Projects here in Miami. Lots of folks here are excited about that. So I guess without further ado, please join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to Reginald O'Neal. Hey, Reggie.
Hey, what's up, René?
How you doing?
I'm good, man.
Good to see you.
You too, man.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us here tonight. I'm really looking forward to talking to you. So, Denise, maybe just go ahead and let's go to the first slide there. Well, before we start, I thought I'd just mention, so we put together a lot of slides. We have a bunch, and we'll try to cover them, but they're not in any particular order. They're kind of like a free associative exploration of your work, I would say. And I was hoping maybe we could try to cover some of the major themes and trends or something that go through your work. And I thought this would be a good image to start with. Happens to be one of the two paintings that PAMM has recently acquired from you, titled Togetherness. And yeah, with that, Reggie, you want to go ahead and start us off and tell us a little bit about this work here?
This painting was. Thank you, René, for having me. Also, man. It's a pleasure.
Likewise.
This painting is of a Miami night scene that was in Overtown, in the Sir John, which was in Liberty City. But this took place in, I think, the early 1970s. I mean, the early 1950s, and this kind of embodies like what Miami used to be, the African American community used to be back in the day, in its heyday. So before the I-95 was built through Overtown in Liberty City, we used to have places like this, like jazz places. We owned a lot of businesses, people owned houses and stuff like that. And that's stuff that I had to like learn through, because I had to learn like as I was older, because I wasn't taught this in school, but this kind of embodies what Overtown was and what Liberty City was in the community. So with this particular painting, it's a massive painting. I wanted to like try to capture just like the mood and the, I guess, understanding from a perspective of now of what, just like how we used to communicate and mingle together as far as like a community. It's kind of different from what I see now,
So this is based on an old black and white photo that you came across somewhere.
Yeah, it was actually taken in the Miami Herald.
Oh, the Herald.
And I came across it through like Google search, because I was looking up like old photos of Overtown, because I didn't know. I was like still in the process of learning what Overtown used to be.
You were in the process of teaching yourself this history that wasn't taught in school, right? mean,
pretty much.
I think that's a really important point. I think, there are all these histories that are just simply not part of our upbringing, and they really change the way that, like, once you know them, they really change the way you think about the world, right?
Yeah, I would say, because it's kind of like, once you don't know like where you came from in a sense, it's hard to know like in a sense where you're going in a sense. Like if that makes sense. Like what I knew or what I was seeing in Overtown was kind of a bit of this, but mostly I was just seeing like the destruction of it. So like just seeing like people on drugs a lot and seeing like people selling drugs, people going to jail, back and forth to jail, like killings and stuff like that. I did see this in a smaller spectrum, but I didn't see as much of a unity in a way. You know what I mean? Like this seemed like it was a good vibe. I think now clubs are they have a bit of a different vibe. There's still some of this like togetherness that's going on, but it's like a lot of tension, I think, sometimes when you go to nightclubs. Like people use them to get away, but there's still like tension, I think. So I think that plays into the psyche of like how our community has like changed a lot, and our mentality has changed towards like us being one, you know.
Yeah. So I think the title really sums up this idea of that what you saw in this photo was this notion of a kind of unity of this community that that I don't think it's not that it's not there, but it's different. It's not what it was, right?
Yeah.
Um,
It's kind of a reminder too of like what like to my community now and like where we're at now, that this is what we used to be. Like I said before, like I didn't know this is what we used to be. So I think that a lot of people within my community probably didn't know or had to relearn or learn at a certain age. So it's a reminder of like the elements that we do find of this, it still remains, and this is where it's coming from, rather than this being completely different, like a detachment from who we are now today. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of distractions, there's a lot of like violence that's going on and stuff like that, but we also like maintain this innocence. You know?
Yeah, let's go to this next one. And by the way, I forgot to mention, if to the folks listening out there, if you have any questions, please drop them into the Q&A box on your Zoom windows there, and we'll try our best to catch them as we go along. So this next painting, Overtown Goodbyes, this one's not looking into the deep past, right? This one's more recent, present, right?
It's a little bit more present than the last image, but it's kind of still the past too. So this is when they were demolishing buildings that was in the pathway of the I-95. And I wanted to paint that because I felt like it was like a parallel between what we're going through now as a community with our gentrification issue, and like buildings popping up and stuff that we're not familiar with, and like rent and stuff going high. So by finding this out, this is what they did, and this is how, like I said before, the destruction of our community happened, where they took people's property and they took businesses and all that stuff just to build this highway through. It's similar to what they're doing now, but it's like now it's like the final blow to where they're gentrifying it and moving people out. You know? Like this, people were still in the community, and there was still like ways we like managed to stay, but now with the gentrification, it doesn't seem like we're going to be staying for much longer. So it's just like a parallel on time and error, kind of.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, this painting, especially, next paired with the one that we saw before, just is a really great reminder of how, everything that this community has been through. It's not just about what's going on within the community. It's all linked up to these huge economic forces that go way beyond that community, and they're affecting it constantly.
Yeah, and I think another thing that I found out too, that this I-95 thing was happening to in a lot of inner city communities. Like I think it happened in St. Paul, I believe in Minnesota, and I think it happened in LA too. So I think this type of stuff was happening all around like ghettos at a similar time. So like when I learned that after I did the painting and after like paralleling it to Overtown, or like specifically talking about Overtown, that like opened my eyes to where you just said also it's like it's a big economic force, it seems.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Tell us about this painting here.
This is my friend and his nephew. His name is Marquise, and his nephew Fat Boy. This is inside of my um, neighborhood that I grew up for 25 years. And this photo was taken actually when the painting happened, which was in 2018. And it's just a normal like thing that happened. It seemed like it's so obscure or just like random, but like this kid on his dirt bike. This kid been riding dirt bike since he was a kid, like since he was way younger than that. I remember when he first got his first dirt bike. Like every year he would break like a bone or something on his dirt bike, and yeah,
Yeah.
this is just a moment in time where uncle and the nephew is uh, just like doing something normal where he's trying to teach him something about bikes.
Yeah, those things look crazy dangerous, but they
Yeah,
also look crazy fun. Yeah.
and since I
Exactly.
was a kid, I wanted to learn how to ride one, but I didn't see so many people like fall and like get like marks and stuff. But I still kind of want to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one thing that's interesting that hadn't occurred to me until just now is that so the other two paintings
Mm,
are of settings that occurred decades ago, right? But this
right.
one is the present, but you're rendering this one in black and white, and
Hmm.
that's sort of the visual language of like nostalgia or memory or something.
Yeah. So this was a part of a series that I was doing called "I Remember My Childhood in Color." So like every painting was called this, and it's basically me reflecting on my childhood. So like I said, I was raised in this neighborhood for 25 years, and being a kid and doing a lot of stuff like inside of the neighborhood and growing up and being the age to where I can look back and see myself inside of the kids that are growing up now. It's like it's like they were doing the same exact things, like playing chase, playing basketball, playing football, riding bikes, like all sorts of stuff. It's like me seeing myself all over again, and taking the color out of it is kind of taking like making it a nostalgic, like
Hmm.
having a nostalgic feel to it in a sense.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like connecting to the past.
yeah, but it's like still present day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next slide, please. And this is, I think this is that's a good segue to this work here, which is based on a Gordon Parks photograph, right?
Right. Right. This is a mural that I actually did in Seattle. Um, and this is a photo, like you said, it's a photo of Gordon Parks, and it was taken in Harlem, I think in the 40s. Like again, this is parallel to something that I grew up doing. Like when I was 4 years old, like I remember vividly of like having fire hydrants like open and playing in the streets. Like kids don't do that nowadays, but we used to do that. And it's crazy that this is so far uh, back, but it's like Harlem was a ghetto in New York in a certain time, and it was kind of parallel to what Overtown was. But the fact that these kids were doing something that we were doing in the '90s, it shows a parallel between ghettos and all across like the world or the United States, where people would find they didn't have the means to enjoy themselves lavishly, but they would find ways to enjoy themselves with things that they're surrounded by. So it's like picking up whatever it is that you're surrounded by and making something out of it. Like the lemon with lemonade
Yeah.
phrase, right? Like these kids are, this fire hydrant probably thought nothing of it. Somebody probably busted it open one day and just like was like, oh, this is the thing to do now. You know?
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, maybe I'm reading into this too much, but like I can imagine that day being like a very hot day, in a
exactly,
neighborhood where,
you could kind of see the sun in the way it's hitting some of the kids, and like
yeah,
the way it's hitting the back of the car, or the way it's hitting the kids' backs, or the way the water is like shining.
yeah,
And
and maybe in a neighborhood where a lot of people are living in like cramped, places, and or maybe where you don't have like some fancy luxury like community pool or something to escape
Exactly.
to.
So you bust a fire.
So you have to improvise ways of enjoying
Yeah.
your days.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is great because a lot of the times we think we need so many things in order to enjoy life, and I don't like growing up in certain area, like in the area that I grew up, we didn't need a lot to just like go to our friend's door, go to each friend's door and like knock and like make them come outside and we played basketball or football and stay out for the rest of the day. Like that was pretty much like we didn't need a lot of money to go to the mall and shop or whatever.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, this is a mural, right? It's this is like a semi-indoor, semi-outdoor mural, right? It's in a garage.
Yeah, it was in the garage. I did it Seattle.
So, well, let's go ahead to the next slide then. I want to talk about your mural practice. I mean, you have this whole other kind of line in your work, very important line of these outdoor exterior murals. And
Yeah,
I guess
I started, I would say like 7 years ago or 8 years ago, where this is like a really, really long like story. But I met these two dudes in Wynwood, and I like started hanging with them, and they gave me an opportunity to do my first mural in Wynwood, and I did another one through them. And then by hanging out with them in Wynwood, I started to meet a lot of other artists, like street artists and stuff. And then eventually I met my mentor named Axel Boyd, and he like taught me everything I know. So like murals was like kind of the first practice, but through it wasn't even the first practice. It was like he taught me classically. He trained me classically, like painting, like proportions, compositions, like all that stuff. Like I would go to his house almost every day, and he would like teach me like different things because he's a Spanish artist. I mean, he's a Spanish painter, and in painting, you know the history of like Spanish and painting. It's like cookies and milk. But he taught me that, and he would take me like all over the places. Like he's a very big street artist, so he would get invited to all these places. And I remember he first uh, invited me to Europe, and then I started like traveling with him for like 5 or 6 years. So he taught me muralism like well, and it became my practice. So I would juggle between that and canvas work. Like when I would do a mural, I would like miss doing canvas work, and when I do too many canvases, I would like miss doing murals.
so he had a really important. He played a really important role in your life and your career, and I just want to make sure everybody hears
yeah,
it.
It's not even like
Axel Void, right?
yeah,
Axel Void is the name. Yeah.
yeah. It's not even like just murals. Like he was like a brother to me almost.
Yeah.
You know, like old traditional ways of like mentorship. Yeah.
So, I'm looking at this image here and I'm just struck because, to me, this doesn't really look like a lot of the kinds of murals that you find in Wynwood, right? Murals, I hate to generalize, they're very varied, but I would say the tendency is that they tend to be more aesthetic, right? More about like beauty or kind of interesting imagery, geometric patterns, formal. It's very formal, or something. There's a lot of surrealism, right? It'll be like a figure with like a human figure with like a bird head or something like that. Like these kinds of things that are very kind of random and that kind of take you out of the ordinary, right? But ultimately, the kinds of images that you find on murals are often not very related to the kinds of things that you'll see on a day-to-day basis in the neighborhood where the murals are located, right? Often. This image here is just very different. I mean, it's pointing to real, like everyday on the ground reality, right?
Pretty much,
not escaping.
Yeah, I kind of like adapted. I always like I said, I started like painting canvases first, and this is something also that Axel taught me, and that's something that he does too, to where he would paint things like this rather than trying to make up a specific image or a specific figure or whatnot. And like something that I would paint on a canvas, I would paint on the wall. Like I would like to paint on the wall.
Right.
This is something I would paint on the canvas.
Right.
And I think it's just a matter of like what what you want to say to an audience, and like this is public art, and gallery canvas work is a bit different. So it's like you're only saying certain things to a certain amount of people, but muralism is like you're saying it's everybody. People who are gonna walk past. So it's like I would like to say the same thing both hands. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that about your work, actually, the way that you approach murals just as you approach your studio practice. And
Sure.
I think that's like a powerful kind of friction, right? When you see an image like this in a public setting,
Exactly.
it's not something we're accustomed to. And tell us a little bit about this one, if you don't mind.
This one is, man, this is the first mural I did in Overtown. I think I did 3 so far, but this is the first one I did in Overtown. And I felt a lot of pressure to do a mural in Overtown because it's my home. And I wanted to like try to figure out what it is I wanted to say in particular. And I was basically talking about, with this image, talking about the state of mind that we were in, or the state that we were in 2017. Where there was a lot of like killings and stuff, like unnecessary violence that was going on inside. And I wanted to make a statement to my whole community. Rather than anybody that's coming from the outside, I wanted to talk to us first. And people from my neighborhood knows this image, and they watch the news and they've seen this happen, and they know who the person is and all that stuff. So it's kind of like it's like a mirror almost, like to the community. And that's pretty much it. Like with this image, it's this guy is being tackled or being detained from the crime scene of his brother. His brother had got killed, and for some reason, this was on the news, like them hovering over the crime scene and hovering over his family coming to see him and stuff like that. And when he seen it, he went to go like look at his brother's body, and when he did that, the police like detained him from like messing up the evidence and stuff, and it turned into this big old like fight with them and the cousin of his relative, and like he wasn't doing nothing but trying to get them off of him, right? So when he was trying to get them off of him, they turned on him and like beat cousin. So it's like, it seemed like they're like beating up a black guy, but it's not necessarily. They're just like detaining him from crimes.
We just got a question.
It's like trying to capture like all this madness that's going on, and like all the stuff that everybody's like kind of feeling. You know?
We just got a question. Is this work still on view in Overtown?
No, they painted it over, man. It's been up for a while. It's been rocking for a while, but they painted it over. I'm not sure what they did to the building or what, but it's not.
That's almost like the part of the nature of this kind of practice, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Happens. So then the actual image, though, it was taken from news footage. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I think that leads to something that we can talk about a little bit further down. But I see in your work this kind of alternation between a tendency to really focus in on individuals and really get a strong sense of who that person is. But in other images, it's as if the figures are kind of standing in for a broader society or broader community. And here, I think what you were just saying helped me understand something a bit more about your work, where like, even when you have something like this, which I mean, often, when you look at something happening in news, what is more kind of alienating, right? Like you don't get a sense of who the individuals are in these news reportages. But you're saying that, you knew him or you knew of him, everybody in the neighborhood kind of knew of him, like people they did have a connection to this person as an individual. So I think that's that's really interesting, really powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, and then yes, this mural practice, he said, through Axel's influence, through these various programs and festivals, you traveled all over the world, huh?
Yeah, I traveled pretty much. Like I gotta miss it. I didn't get on a plane this entire year.
Oh yeah, you miss it?
Yeah, a lot. Man.
I miss it too, man. I miss it too. I miss Europe. I miss New York. I miss LA. I can't tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, this one was in DR. Like both of us got invited to this one, like because we have a friend named Elio. He's another muralist, and he's from DR, and he started this whole mural festival, and we flew down there. This is the second time I went to DR because he did three of them. So this is the second time I went, and this particular image is of kids like playing basketball inside of my neighborhood. Like what I was telling you before is that these buildings are very distinctive, like they're project buildings. So um, they're I think it's another like set of these buildings like in Miami too. Yeah, and this is kind of parallel to watching kids play basketball in my neighborhood, like doing the same thing that we were doing.
We got a question from an audience member. It's really interesting. Do you see parallels between Overtown and the cities you've done murals in internationally?
Oh yeah, I think ex- this is a perfect example. Like this was on a house in DR that was right in front of a basketball court.
Hmm.
Like when I was done painting, like I used to just go play basketball, and it was a kid that used to like sit with me like every day, um, like and watch me paint when he get out of school. So like in DR, like a lot of kids don't have nothing, and they were going to school and stuff like that. So going to school and just like hanging out and kind of similar to what we used to do. So yeah,
Yeah.
and I think in some certain instances, like I see parallels, but sometimes I try to bring a whole new like um, idea or a whole new like setting to a neighborhood that
Hmm.
I usually go paint to.
I mean, just from this view, this kind of structure here, this house is a very different kind of architecture from the architecture that's
Exactly.
depicted in the image, and yet you're drawing this connection, right? Like despite the differences, not just of the architecture and of the setting, but despite like cultural differences, linguistic differences, you're
Yeah,
building a bridge, right?
yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's super important for me too to try to do. Even if somebody doesn't, even if I go to a place where they're not familiar with the subject matter, I think it leaves them to be interested in it, and therefore they will learn, and then they will find like some parallels between their culture and my culture as well too.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like building bridges between cultures because it's kind of a universal thing. I think once we get a chance to like understand each other, we'll know that we're kind of all doing the same thing
Yeah.
in a way, but just like different.
So let's just look through a few other examples of your mural practice, and then I want to get back to your studio work.
For sure.
This is, I mean, just look at the scale on this. This is quite big,
Yeah.
and it's just you're taking this like this fleeting, very specific moment and just making it huge, and making it
Yeah.
permanent, right? Um,
I like this image too. Like I won't speak too much on it, spend a lot of time, but this one is of a kid that's inside of Nickerson Garden Projects, which is in Watts, California, and
hmm.
it's a project building. So it's like similar. It's very, very similar to um, what I grew up in, and it's like way on the opposite side of the country. And yeah, this kid just like the way he looks and stuff like that, and like them being in a really big field, but like the kids in the background are playing. It's parallel to me. So
So let's go to the next slide.
for sure.
This one here, I love this one. This is, I was telling you, this is like such a universal image. Like anybody who's a dad, like
Yeah.
just can relate to this, and you
Yeah.
can, you can go back 100,000, 20,
Yeah, go find the
10,000
building
years in
and change
human
it.
history and still people will relate to it. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Next one, please. And this one here as well.
It's my baby girl, my niece.
That's your niece? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, before we go to the next slide, I just want to mention something, and I want to go back to this point that I made earlier about how in some cases you get this really strong sense of the individual. In some cases, their face or their identity is you kind of like, you either look at them from an angle or you look at them from behind. I think that applies a lot to the next slide, which I just want to mention everyone is a very powerful image. Let's go ahead. So this work, I'll just mention in passing, was just recently acquired by the ICA here in Miami. You know, in this case, it's not that you're looking at the person from behind, obviously, it's that you cropped out their face, what identifies them, right? Well, you want to jump in and talk a little bit about this work?
Yeah, I think like what you mentioned before, like the parallel between the image before and this one, it's kind of using a person's body and like something that happened to them, or just like their body language and things that they have like attached to their hair, or like the way their demeanor is, or their skin color, to make it kind of a universal thing, to where it's like this is not talking about a particular person, but it's talking about a lineage of people in a way. So like with my niece, like having her back turned and her having beads in her head is like universal to a lot of black girls, right? Or a lot of people who as kids like will wear beads in their head, and the same thing with this one. So this parallel between this zipper, which is something that happens, like this kid has been shot like 13 times, I believe. And usually he survived, but usually when they do that, or uh, you get like done surgery on, like when it's like, I guess, um, in the body and the torso area, they go to work on you from the inside. So they had to cut his whole body open to take out the bullets and like patch him up and put him back together, put his body back together. So the reason why I wanted to paint this is particular because this image and this scar and the way he's showing it is talking about something that happens to a lot of people. Like my older brother has this because he was stabbed, and it's kind of a universal thing that's going on within like the black culture with like gun violence, and people who are survivors of gun violence and stuff like that. They have war rooms and they have like survival wounds. So this is kind of paying like not a homage, but it's kind of showing like my respect to him, but also him showing how he's a survivor in a sense. You know what I mean? Like
Oh.
he lift up his shirt and like showed it with pride. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I think by cropping out the face, you know, you're making it. I mean, it's still very much a portrait of this individual, but you're expanding it to talk about how um, about larger social uh, conditions.
Yeah. It's a portrait of a scar.
Right. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Um, this one's brand new, right? I mean, the paint is still wet on this one. I'm really glad we were able to fit it in. This one, you know, here again, it's like you have these humans that feel like each one is very distinct and very individual, but you don't see their faces. And in fact, the guy in the white shirt, you've done something new, right? Of kind of like blurring the face,
Yeah.
something you hadn't done before.
Yeah. This was like that face was kind of just like playing around, and like when I was like doing in the process of doing the painting in the beginning stages, like it was like that. So I was like intending to like finish it, or like not finish it, but like work on it more. But I kind of liked it how it looked, and I thought it was like a bit different. So I left it. But yeah, these bodies are just like people, man, and like socializing and talking amongst each other. And I think that it probably doesn't entail to anybody else who these people are, but I think it posed the question, like who these people are, and it makes you like put them in the context of being like human beings. And I think that's something that society doesn't do when it comes to like black men. I think a lot of the times they don't think that we're like social, like people, and we don't like have feelings, or we don't converse and hang out and all this other stuff. So this is kind of me just like being in a moment and just realizing that I know this is something that we do on a normal basis, and like normalizing because it's normal to me. These two dudes in the photo are having a discussion in the middle of the bullpen while the rest of the people are watching on the discussion. It's as simple as that. Really.
Okay, let's look at the next one. And then, what the next several images are, I would say, just like really intense encounters with very specific individuals. These are real portraits, right? And I think they're really affecting. This one, you can tell it's someone on like a BMX, right? On a bike. And well, I don't know. Tell us about this image. I'll let you take it away. Yeah.
This is a kid that's in my neighborhood. Like I said, I remember my child in color is me, like kind of capitalizing on the children and um, and what they are doing on a normal basis, right? But this particular photo, like or image, he just like looked back at me, and I had my camera. Like I paint from photography, so usually like I go through a lot of images that I paint, but this one just like was just him looking at me, really on a Christmas day, like riding his bike and being like, "What?" Like about to take off on his moped. So
It's really, it just really shows, something that photography and painting can both do, right? Like you go about your life and you're surrounded by all of these images that maybe you don't necessarily register. They don't really mean much, right? But there's something about freezing it with a camera or with a painting that like you notice things that you wouldn't have otherwise noticed, right? And like these very normal moments become like really kind of intense, right?
Exactly. Like it freezes time though, but I think that it's like like I think we go on every day without paying attention to small moments. You know what I mean? Like the way I don't know, like a day feels like you don't necessarily take a break and just like embrace it. Kind of go on because you have to go to work or you have to do this and you have to do that. And I think art allows people to slow down and process like life, I think, in a way. So like with this kid and the way he's looking, it's like me processing this. It may mean a lot more, but it's really just him like looking at me and about to take off on his thing. But like I like I don't know, like the way his hair is, he's a kid, right? And the way his hair is probably tells a whole different story and where he comes from and all this stuff, or like what region of Florida he's from, or his skin pigment might tell his diaspora or something like that. But it's not, to me, it's not that deep. It's something that's very like simple. Um, and that's kind of what I like to do with most of my work is just, like cut out all the like excess fat and like make things so like polarizing. I mean, make things so like difficult to understand sometimes. I just like to bring it down to like very core and very details of like moments and life kind of.
Yeah, let's look at this one here. This one, I mean, I look at this portrait and I just get like such a strong sense of, of a human being behind those eyes, like you really, like you really kind of captured the psychology really strongly there, I think.
It's another thing too. Like I think of my work like a lot. Like I just like sometimes I just like paint and just paint images that I like and or I paint things with deeper meanings to me, but I don't try to translate that meaning and make somebody else think it. So like with this was like actually a study, and this was in the process of me being in my black and white series. Um, to where I was just like, man, let me try some color. Like I was at Alex's house and he had like this palette sitting out, and I just like used this color.
This was the first time you
like,
used color?
No. This wasn't the first time. It was like me just like going back to it. So
okay.
kind of the black and white series started from me going back to the basics, getting my like proportions right and stuff like that. It was just like a lot of painful work that I had to like get back to. But I just like was focusing on values and compositions and proportions and stuff like that with the black and white series. And this was just like in the middle of all that and just like try to paint a portrait in color, right? As you can see, to me, the colors look like they're everywhere. and like they're not like in line, but everybody thinks different.
Yeah,
But
when
this
when
is
you
like
when you see
like,
this in person, you'll see. I mean, there's all sorts of tones in there that don't come across digitally. Like everybody, go check out his show at Spinello, November 20th, and you'll see what I mean. Um, but speaking of portraits in color, let's go to the next one. Yeah, I just think that the colors here are just so beautiful. And again, even though she's not looking right at you, you really get the strong sense of an encounter with a human being, a very specific human being. You know.
This one was like, this was a commission. Like she wanted me to just like
Mm.
paint her like in this like godly figure and like queen status really. And I felt like we had a conversation before this, like a few conversations before this, and she was kind of telling me what she was feeling because she's from the same neighborhood as I am. And we kind of parallel between like things that we're interested in, how we grew up and stuff like that, and how she managed to like come up out of it, but still maintain her sense of like uh, being from where she's from. So like I tried to like just try to capture that feel, but like she had on like this really colorful like dress that I was like super intimidated by because it was like a lot of color. But yeah, this is like a really thick painting too. It's like a lot of paint like applied to it. So yeah, it's kind of like just
I think this one's a beauty. Yeah. So we have about just a little over 15 minutes left. So I wanted to, I just want to make sure we get on, cover a few more works. Okay, this one, I mean, we have to talk about this one. This is another one that we acquired from the museum. Tell us about this one.
This is my uncle Reggie. He is my mother's brother. So I get my name from my dad, but this is my uncle's from my mom's side, my mother's brother. This is her older brother, and this particular image, like I said, I painted from photography. So this particular day, I was going to see my grandmother, and he was in the house, and he had his beanie on, which he usually has a beanie on, and he has hair under it, but his hair like kind of forms like from the beanie. He doesn't touch his hair. So he had his hair out, like he never shows his hair. I would always have to like when I was a kid ask him like, "Let me touch your hair." And he had his beanie out, and I was just like, "Whoa!" Like amazed by it, like the length and how it grew and stuff like that, because I never see it. So I asked him to like step outside, and like I got this photo, and like I wanted to paint this particular image of him
So,
in like, the light and all that stuff. It's kind of like a baroque feel, like
right, that's what I was gonna say. It has a very strong like Velasquez, maybe Caravaggio.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just like Caravaggio. Like I'm really like into like light and shadows and like how things are like kind of in the dark and like just the light reveals it. Like and it kind of makes you like finish the rest of the image off sometimes. And just like portraying like those type of things and also just like regular people putting regular people inside of these settings and stuff. So yeah, this
Yeah,
is
you were
just like
telling me about how that's something you really admire about Velasquez, about how he was like this court painter, painting the king and painting these
yeah,
like fancy, like, you know, nobles on horses on mountaintops, but also sort of he had this side gig where he would be painting like the servants of the kitchen or yeah.
right.
Um,
Yeah, like me and Alex, like that's Alex's like favorite painter, which it's kind of not my favorite painter. Sorolla is my favorite painter, but he like kind of pushed it on me. But yeah, this is stuff that we would discuss a lot of like the history of like painting and like what it is and like going to some of these museums and seeing how there's a lot of royal people that's being painted, but there's very few of just like normal people like in this time frame. Like as time progresses, people started painting like normalizing just regular people and pulling regular people to the side and painting them. And that's something that I think that we have the freedom to do now. It's just like normalize people and like regular stories and not focus too much on the royalty and the rich and stuff like that. So that's something that I just like to do a lot and just like paint stuff that I feel I'm surrounded by.
so and tell us about this one. I think this one's a really it's not obvious from the image itself what inspired it, or the moment that you're capturing here?
Yeah, this is inspired by Facebook. Um, no, I ran across this video of these kids who were playing basketball, and um, this one kid, like, he missed the shot, like I was telling you, he missed the shot, and he was like walking back to the other side of the court with his head down. His teammate just like ran over and just like tapped him on the back and like pushed his head up, and he used like this kind of this this like this in the photo. And I thought that I don't know, for some reason I just thought that motion was like very powerful in the way that he's another just like kid trying to uplift his friend and tell him like keep his head up. So I think there's an entire like embodiment of just like men like bigging up each other and like being there for each other and stuff like that. I think a lot of times we're considered soft, or like our friends would tell us that we're soft and all this other stuff for being down and feeling down, but or missing a shot, like our friends would call it.
Yeah, I mean, especially for young men, that's such an important role that other males, particularly fathers and older brothers and uncles, can play, right? And let's go to the next slide and talk a little bit about that.
It's my friend Javon. This is him and his son Javon, and I wanted to talk about the relationship between him and his son, because when he was growing up, he didn't have his father was incarcerated when he was like very, very young. So he was like kept out of his life. And I had like a few conversations with him, and he would talk about him and like how he wanted to like just like be the best father he can possibly be to his son. And I just found that to be very powerful, because like the relationship that I have with my father is very strong. And my dad went to prison when I was 9 years old. So it kind of like touched me in a way to where he wants to make sure that he's there for his child. I think a lot of the times it's like not the status quo of an African American man in America to be like so like diligent about being in his children's life. Like I think that a lot of the times we get this stereotype that we're like we don't want to be fathers, and like we don't want to participate in our kids' lives, but there's a lot of men out there that want to. So I wanted to kind of talk about that through my friend.
Is this like street lighting?
Yeah,
shining down on them. I can sense that from this. Yeah, there's almost like a religious feel to it, but then also you get a sense of like a dark place with a kind of a harsh street light.
It's just a regular street light.
Let's go to the next slide then. I think it's there are folks like many people like your friend who very much want to they do want to have that strong connection, be very much involved in their children's lives, and in many cases though that connection is cut by external forces. And mass incarceration is one of the major probably the major social problem that we deal with in this country. And so tell us about this work here.
This is of my dad, like I was saying before, like of my dad and my older sister, who's like a year older than me, Rachel. And like this is before I was born, before my little sisters was born and my younger brother was born. And this is just him being a dad, like as normal as possible. And this is kind of outside of the concept of what people see him as. And what position he's in now, he's considered like a criminal, and he needs to be punished for the stuff that he did. But it's like, there's also this part of him that is a father, and him being taken away from his kids kind of parallel too.
This image is just so intimate and touching, I think.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next one. I'm sorry, Reggie, what'd you say?
I love this photo. Like I always wanted to paint it, but I never had the courage.
This is and this painting is painted with a lot of love and a lot of heart. I can feel it. Let's go to I can feel it in all your work. this is a mural that also takes your father as a subject, right?
Pretty much. So this is actually the last mural I did, I believe. I did this last year, October, in Areola, Italy. Uh, it's I don't know, it's like a very important piece that I kind of wanted to like do. I wanted to do this in the States, like really, really bad, but I, Italy was the moment where it should have happened. This is of my father and my little cousin and slaves that are in the background in the cotton fields. And this particular painting is like something that I'm really, really proud of because I think it talks about something that haunts like my um, people and my culture, and it's still present as far as like today. Talking about the mass incarceration, like you was talking about, and also the slaves and how these people were held bondage without their consent and stuff like that. And now with the mass incarceration, how people are criminalized and still in the Constitution is considered slaves in this country. So I wanted to like make this parallel between that and mass incarceration, but also use my father, like a person who is very, very dear to me, and put this in the forefront that this happens to people and it happens to their families and also their relatives and I mean their friends and stuff like that. And it happens to so many people. And it makes me raise the question, have anything changed or not? You know what I mean? The conditions that we are in today opposed to back then. There's a lot of stuff that has changed, but this is also something that hasn't, and it's very real, it's very present. So I wanted to
That's
talk about it.
beautiful. That's beautiful. And I mean, the scale is just everybody can see that kind of the air conditioning unit there just to get a sense of how large this is and just what a great presence this must have in person. Um, and then we come to our last slide here, which is I see it very much as a kind of a compliment to the many paintings you've made of your father. This is your mom. So, this is very new also, right? This is
Yeah, this is the last painting I painted for the
last one,
show.
yeah.
Yeah, this is Sabrina Woodard. This is my mom. Yeah, I never painted a portrait of her. I never painted her at all. I'm actually like sitting right next to the painting. But I never painted her. Like I never drew her. I drew her like I think once or twice, but I never like put a lot of like attention on like her or like her doing a painting of her because to me it's like I attach a lot of feelings and stuff like that towards certain things that I paint, and with me it's like how do I express uh, the amount of gratitude, the amount of like love and affection that I have for my mother. And it's hard to like it's like me and my older brother like sat down and tried to tell her how much she means to us and all of this stuff. And I don't think she like really understand it. I think she's just like, yeah, it was my job, it was my duty to be a mother. But it's like to like the way she raised us and what she did for us, it makes it's like it's beyond this world. I wouldn't like trade her in for the world. So to try to like translate that through word, through song, whatever, I just like this is my way, even though I think I fall very, very short of translating that. And I think a lot of like things that I probably do will fall short to like what I actually feel. But this is my attempt to express what I feel about her. And yeah, this is
I can definitely see kind of words failing me and trying to express something like that, like to my mom. But I think to me it all comes through here in this image. I mean, better than words. Can I ask you a question?
For sure.
And you don't have to answer if it's too personal. But has she seen this painting?
She hasn't.
She hasn't.
She hasn't yet. I want to show her when the show happens. Like I just want
Oh
to
my gosh.
just like see it. My stepdad seen it, but she hasn't seen it.
She's
Like
gonna
me and him was like talking about it in front of her. She's like, "What you talking about?" I was like, "Oh, the
love.
painting that I was painting." I'm trying to like play it off.
Oh my gosh!
But
Wow,
yeah, she hasn't
that's
seen
that's going to be an amazing moment.
it. Yeah, I hope she cries. I hope I get that out.
I feel like crying right now. Um, so, all right, well, great. Let me. We've gotten a bunch of questions. Let me let me pour through them just real quick here. Sorry. We have one from another really talented artist who actually was the last uh, participant in the series, Mural Practice. He's
Okay.
asking if money wasn't an issue, what would be a dream project for you?
A dream project. I don't know. I have no idea. Uh, Man, trying to do like I don't know, a video installation or something, or like a sculpture or something that like parallels like African Americans and Africans, like, and show like really show them how nothing has really changed in a
Hmm.
sense. Just like we have adapted different cultures, but most of our culture is pretty much the same. Like I wanted to try to do project like that talks about that, but like if it was like um like something that pertains to that, I don't know what a big dream project and make a music album probably because I'm a big fan of music.
Here, I'll ask another one here. Could you talk about how you use titles to add context to your work? Sometimes they're very specific, sometimes more poetic and evocative.
Yeah, I think sometimes like I try to throw like I remember trying to explain to Alex like about like curveballs. Like it's really a curveball, but it's like more trying to like add poetry to the piece, right? So it's like there's something in front of you, you think you have an idea of what it is, but you read the title or you read the text, and it kind of throws you off, and it throws you in like this world of trying to figure out. So I think I just play around with that sometimes. Like the big piece is called "At the Feet of Mountains," and that's a whole like that's like the title piece for the show. So that piece kind of sums up the entire show, but it kind of doesn't. So um,
Let me ask one last question, and one last question, and it's a big one. Okay, you ready? Um, but I think it's an important one. Um, how do you navigate between hope and despair as you confront assaults on your community while also witnessing solidarity and awakening?
say it again.
How do you navigate between hope and despair as you confront assaults on your community while also witnessing solidarity and awakening?
Mm, um,
I mean, I think in your work there is this alternation between hope and despair, and
yeah,
joy and tragedy. Um,
man, I think that to me, it's like it's just life. I think it's like the way of the world and the way of like everything that exists to me. Like everything is always changing, and stuff that you love dearly is going to uh, come to pass. And as as deep as that sounds, but I think that that's how I feel about my community too.
mm,
Like I'm starting to see a bunch of like old photos and stuff like that, and stuff that I would like to talk about and see like friends hanging out, stuff that we normally do, and I'm like, man, they're gonna take our community away from us, like stuff that we've been holding on for dear life, and it's like there's nothing we can do about that because like that's a part of evolution. I just hope that what I really hope is that we keep the same momentum that we have now. Like I feel like a lot of people in our community are like starting to like want to be independent and do a lot of things for themselves and for the culture and for us as a community. So I just hope that it doesn't distract us from that very uh, momentum, and that's what I hope for. But I try to be at peace with it. Try to be at peace with the change that's happening. Yeah.
Thank you, Reggie. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Thank you for this discussion. Thank you for making the work that you make. And it's just been amazing to me to get to know you this last, I don't know, when did I first do a studio visit with you? About a year and a half ago, year ago or so.
Yeah,
Um, and, yeah, but again, thank you, and we'll see you around. Good luck with the preparations for your show,
for sure.
and take good care of yourself. All right.
All right.
Let's before we go, yes, let's show this last slide so that everyone can take note of upcoming programs. And on that note, I'll say good evening to everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us. And please join us again December 10th.